Welcome into the CFP podcast. Let's get started with the talking points for today. The first one is I'm going to spend as much time on each of these as I can, is the Florida Gators. And I'm going to talk about Billy Napier. So let's start the discussion with Billy Napier in Florida. The Gators, if you look at Florida's schedule this year, they have the toughest schedule in all of college football. And I have two scenarios for everybody to try to wrap their mind around and soak on. The first one is, what if Florida starts out 1-3? Does the trustees, the boosters, the athletic director, after a 1-3 start, do they all decide to, do the boosters go to the athletic director and say, look, we need a new head, Billy Napier needs to go. We need to get a new coach in here and get a new voice in the locker room and try to freshen up the feel, and they let go of Billy Napier. Or the second one is they give them till, say Florida starts, I'm going to say 2-4, 2-5. Then do they make the decision, okay, we've only won 2 games so far this year. Is it time to get rid of Billy Napier? If yes, do we fire him and just hire an interim coach, or start looking for other head coaches outside of the program? And if they say the latter and they say, let's promote somebody to the interim head coach while we look for a new head coach, that's probably the best course of action. And for the Gators, I don't know how many games they're going to win this year, because if you look, they play Miami, they have to play both Texas and Texas A&M, and I have really high expectations for A&M this year. And I'm ready to be disappointed in A&M, and I'll get to them later on in the episode because we're going to talk about a lot. But back to the Gators. They also play Georgia, and there is absolutely zero chance they beat Georgia this year. Georgia's reloaded. I know they lost a few guys in the portal. I'm going to talk about one of the incoming transfers here in a little bit on Georgia from Arizona State to Georgia. But I will get you up to speed on that in a little bit. But again, with Florida, and the issue is inconsistency at quarterback. How long does Graham Mertz last as the quarterback this year? Is he going to last the whole entire season? Or will he get benched halfway through the season for true freshman DJ Lagway? I think if Mertz struggles, you will see DJ Lagway get some reps as the starting QB for Florida. And if that happens, come back to this video and tell me I was correct on that statement. Because I've watched DJ Lagway spring highlights. Kid can really spin the football. He really can spin it. And I think that he should be the starting quarterback going into week 1. And it should not be Graham Mertz, because we've experienced the Graham Mertz effect for way too long. If you're a Wisconsin fan, you know what I'm talking about. You had to put up with Graham Mertz for 3 years. And I was jumping for joy for you Wisconsin fans when Mertz left to go to Florida. And with that being said, I don't know why Graham Mertz chose to come back. I think he's going to lose his job halfway through the season to DJ Lagway. And I think, mark my words and clip this, I think Billy Napier gets fired within the first month of the 2024 college football season. I think he is the first coach to get axed and fired. And that's it. And it's one, it's because of their schedule. And two, he was really good at recruiting at Louisiana, but that's because Louisiana is a group of 5 school, and it's in a hotbed for college football in Louisiana. Florida's a hotbed too. I mean, I could see them giving Napier the whole entire season this year, and then they say, okay, at the end of the season, if they didn't progress and they feel like they need a new mind in charge, then they get rid of Napier. But I don't see that happening. Within the first month or two of the year, if they start out 1-3, 1-4, 2-5, 1-5, 0-5 at worst, that they can Billy Napier and he gets let go by Florida and gets picked up by somebody else. And I'm going to make a bold prediction right now. If Napier is fired, watch this name for the next head coach at Florida. Ohio State offensive coordinator Brian Hartline. Or, and I know this is a stretch, Deion Sanders at Colorado. Watch those two names for the next head coach at Florida if Billy Napier is fired. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is how do I word this? A questionable transfer decision from Jaden Rashada, who, yes, I'm pretty sure you've heard the name Jaden Rashada. He was a Florida commit at one point, decommitted from Florida because he wasn't going to get the NIL money that he wanted from the Gators. Then he committed to Arizona State, played 3 games last year there, and he jumped in the portal hoping to go somewhere, maybe where he would start. But he chose to go to Georgia. And my problem with him going to Georgia is he's not going to start this year. Maybe he starts in 2025 after Carson Beck leaves, but he's not beating out Carson Beck for the job this year. And if he was planning on going there to start, he's not going to. He's going to be sitting behind Carson Beck. And I guess he wants to learn from a really good head coach that's a QB guru, somewhat of a QB guru, and Kirby Smart. But I question this transfer. I don't know why he would choose to go somewhere where he's going to have to sit. If he stayed at Arizona State, he probably would have still been the starting quarterback. Because if you look at Arizona State's roster, there's not really anybody else there that is going to compete for the starting quarterback job. So I understand him wanting to go into one of the Power 4 conferences, but why did you choose Georgia? Is it because they gave you a lot of NIL money? If that's the case, then okay, fine. I guess that's a good opportunity for you in the future. to be the starting quarterback after Carson Beck leaves. But all power to you, Jaden Rashada. Not gonna hate. I just am a little skeptical of your decision to go to Georgia instead of going somewhere where you could have started and actually played, instead of having to sit a year behind a guy that's probably going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft next year. And that's what blows my mind about certain kids where they transfer. And I just don't, to me, it doesn't really make sense where certain guys transfer to me. I understand, like, another one, but this one makes a lot of sense actually to me, is former Oregon State running back Damian Martinez going from Oregon State to Kansas State. It's closer to home for Martinez, and his dad is an alumni of Kansas State. So that makes a lot more sense to me compared to this Jaden Rashada going from Arizona State to Georgia. For one, I don't get it. And two, it's head scratching to me. I don't understand it at all. It doesn't really make sense to me. The next thing I'm going to talk about is Deion Sanders. I'm going to share my screen with y'all, and we're going to get into a little Deion chatter. So this is a quote from Deion Sanders to one of his former players, Xavier Smith. He took my social media handles off of my practice jersey and put the 24/7 Sports Transfer Portal account handle. Xavier Smith recalls telling Deion Sanders telling him he should enter the spring transfer portal. And I will give you my opinion on this in a second after I finish reading you the exchange. He only knows his kids' names. He calls everyone else Deion's child and child of prime, like he's Jesus reincarnated. Xavier Smith, former Buffalo. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say on this whole Deion situation thing. Okay, I know everybody in the media has been talking about it the last few days. I've seen it with other content creators on YouTube and TikTok. Everybody's doing this because Deion likes to be in the media. And I mean, I don't really agree with it, but I'm still on the Colorado hype train. Regardless of this latest debacle with Deion, with Prime and his former players, what I'm going to say is, although I don't agree with the way Deion put out that quote, it just, to me, it's, how do I say this? It's puzzling why Deion would be talking about one of his former players like that. And see, that's why some people don't like Deion Sanders. And they think he's a real butthead. Or he's a pain. Or he's not somebody you want to associate yourself with. My personal opinion, and this is the last thing I'm going to say on Deion. I don't agree with it, but To each is their own, as I've been told as I've gone. That's the motto I've gone by growing up. To each is their own. Or another one is what's good for the geese and sometimes not good for the gander. In this case, what's good for Xavier Smith isn't good for Deion Sanders. And I don't really, like I said, I don't mind the fact that people are picking on Deion for this and call him a jerk. But it's not okay when you look further into it. It's more of just everybody has their own opinion. And if you don't like somebody's opinion, you don't have to respond to it. You can just ignore it and move on with your life. The next thing I'm going to talk is the University of Michigan and their quarterback battle, and who I think their quarterback might be week 1. They've been having a competition for their starting quarterback. During their spring game, they had 2 or 3 different guys in. I think, in my opinion, it's down to 2 guys. I think it's true freshman Jaden Davis and returning, I think he's a junior this year, quarterback Alex Orji. And I think Alex Orji will probably win the starting quarterback job for Michigan this year. I think it'll be Alex Orji. I am not 1,000% sure. We'll know more toward the beginning of the season at Big Ten Media Days. But I feel like Alex Orji will be named the starter at Michigan. And we do offer memberships here with the Sports Talk Podcast YouTube channel. They start at 99 cents a month, and the most expensive one is $14.99 a month. And we are on the road to 3,000 subscribers. Let's try to get to 3,000 subscribers by November 1st. November 1st. Let's try to get to 3,000 subs by then. The next thing I'm going to talk about is Ohio State. And I find this rather amusing and interesting. Ohio State didn't lose a single quarterback in the spring in the transfer portal during the spring. And I find that really surprising because I thought either Devin Brown or Lincoln Keenholz, Devin Brown or Lincoln Keenholz was going to jump in the transfer portal, but they didn't. Ohio State kept all 5 of their quarterbacks and didn't lose one in the spring transfer portal. They thought they were going to. A team that did lose a quarterback in the transfer portal was Rutgers. Gavin Wimstead entered the portal because Rutgers picked up Minnesota transfer quarterback Ethan Kaliakmanis. But back to Ohio State. I'm surprised they kept all their quarterbacks in the portal and didn't lose one in the portal. It's really surprising to me. I thought they would lose a quarterback to the portal, but they didn't. Kept all of them, which is surprising to me. And I got to think that all think they can play. Will Howard is probably going to be the starting quarterback week 1 for Ohio State, unless he gets injured. Then if he gets injured, it might be Devin Brown. It might be Lincoln Keenholz. It might be Aaron Nolan, Julian Sayin. But I think, and Ryan Days already came out and said that Julian Sand is going to get an immense amount of playing time this year, which to me means he might start a few games for Ohio State. But I think to start the season, it will be Will Howard as the starting quarterback. And the last thing I'm going to go over on the podcast today is my post-spring top 25 rankings. Let's get started. So at number 25 is South Florida. And I'm going to explain why I have teams ranked where I do. So let's get into it. Since number 25 is South Florida. Florida, I like what they've done in the spring and in their recruiting. They landed a 5-star kicker. And that's something USF doesn't really do, is land 5 stars. The 5 stars go to Florida State, Florida, Miami, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas. But they did get a 5-star kicker, and it's Martin Grammatica's son that they got to commit. And I think they can build off what they did last season, and they might be able to win their conference this year. At number 24 is South Carolina. It is the Landon Sellers era. It's in Columbia, South Carolina, and I have very high expectations for South Carolina this year in the SEC. There's people that are saying that South Carolina is not going to be good this year. I don't buy it. I think they will be. At number 23 is Texas Tech. I've learned my lesson. Don't write off Joey McGuire. Joey McGuire is one of the best head coaches in the Big 12. And I think Texas Tech is going to compete big time in the Big 12 this year and win some games. At number 22 is Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is an interesting ACC team. And if you're a betting person, I think the odds are out for the teams that are going to win their conference this year. I would put $5 down on Virginia Tech to win the ACC this year. I like what Virginia Tech's done in the spring. And just a little heads up, teaser to the end of this video, what I will be talking about. At number 21 is Utah. Cam Rising is back, and I think Utah is going to be a problem in the Big 12 this year. Big time problem with a capital P. I really like what Kyle Whittingham has done. They did not lose a lot in the portal in the winter or the spring section of the portal. I think they brought in a couple transfers, and they had a good recruiting class. And I think they're going to be really good this year in their first year in the Big 12. At number 20 is Colorado. Yes, I am drinking the Deion Sanders Colorado hype again for the second year now. Is it going to blow up in my face? Maybe. It might. Who knows? But I love what Deion's been doing in the portal. He rebuilt that retooled that offensive line, and he had a good recruiting class too. And I think Colorado will be a top 25 team in my preseason rankings before the season starts. At number 19 is West Virginia. Can Neil Brown and West Virginia build off their 2023 season? I I assume to bet they can, and I think they will actually build off that 2023 season. And I think they'll take a step up this year and win more games than they did last year. And you'll get all those bold predictions and all that in the college football podcast preseason top 25 awards and predictions at the end in the month of August, right before the first week of the season. At number 18 is Clemson. And yes, I know what some people are going to say. Whoa, that's way too low for Clemson. They should be in the top 15. That's where I'm going to say pump the brakes a little bit, because although I think Clemson's in for a resurgence this year in the ACC. Will they win the ACC? No. But I think they finished in the top 5 of the ACC. And I think second year under Garrett Riley's system for Cade Klubnik is going to be a success. And I think Clemson post-spring 18 is the perfect spot for them. At number 17 is Miami. And I made a mistake earlier when I said Damian Martinez transferred to Kansas State. He ended up transferring to Miami of Florida, which, again, that's another big get in the transfer. That's a huge get in the transfer portal for Mario Cristobal. And Miami's been doing work in the portal. If you go on 24/7 or any of the sites that do the transfer portal, look at Miami's transfer portal class. They have one of the best transfer portal classes in college football. At number 16 is LSU. With LSU, I wanted to put them higher, but I don't know if I can right now because they're replacing Malik Neighbors, and they're replacing Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. and Jaden Daniels. And the only thing we know that's for certain right now is their quarterback. It is Garrett Nussmeier, which, don't get me wrong, I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to be a great quarterback for LSU, but we don't know how good he's capable of being. We haven't seen him start yet. At number 15 is Oklahoma. Oklahoma made some waves in the portal. I am a little skeptical, though. Their first year in the SEC. How are they going to do competition-wise in the SEC? Because the Big 12, it was them and Texas that always ran the Big 12, which you'll see. You'll hear me talk about Texas in a little. At number 14 is Kansas State. I think Kansas State will have a really good season this year in football. And I like them right here at 14 in the post-spring 5. At number 13 is NC State. They're another team that has done really good in the portal. Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina, and they got some other guys in the portal, like Noah Rogers from Ohio State, which I'm not mad that he hopped in the portal and went there. He knew he was buried on the depth chart at Ohio State. He knew he wasn't going to play. So that just tells me that he went somewhere where he thought he was going to play, and that would be North Carolina State. I think North Carolina State is a sleeper team in the ACC this year. At number 12 is Tennessee. I wanted to put Tennessee inside the top 10, but I couldn't find a way to put them there. And it's not because they lost Joe. They did lose a lot of guys. But the reason I could have put them in the top 10 is because quarterback. Nico Iamaga Valet is the new Tennessee fans. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Correct me in the comments down below with how you pronounce his name. But I'm just going to go Nico. Nico is the new starting quarterback in Tennessee. And we saw him in the bowl game, and he looked really bad in the bowl game, but that's one start. What's he going to look like in a full season as the starter at Tennessee? At number 11 is Missouri. And this is another team I wrote off entirely last year. I didn't think they would be good at all. And they were. They overachieved, actually. And Eli Drinkowitz got an extension. And I think they're going to be just as good this year as they were last year, maybe even better. In my post-spring top 25, that's why they're at number 11. They have Brady Cook back and Luther Burden. They are replacing Cody Schrader, but I think Missouri will be just fine. At number 10 is Florida State. They're another team that hit the portal hard for wide receivers, corners, D linemen, O linemen. They had a really good portal cycle in the first portal cycle in the winter. Grabbing a couple guys. And I think Florida State, I know they lost Jordan Travis, but they got DJ Uyanga-Lele. And I think DJU and Florida State are going to do big things in 2024. I think they might win the national championship this year. At number 9 is the portal king himself, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. They lost Judkins in the portal to a team that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, in Ohio State. But they reloaded and brought in a new running back. And I like how hard Lane Kiffin goes in the portal. And I think it's warranted. And I appreciate the effort. At number 8 is Oregon. Dan Lanning, heck of a recruiter. We thought he was going to leave Oregon and take the Syracuse job or take another job that opened. But he said, no, I'm sticking where I'm at, and I'm going to stay at Oregon. And he gets Dylan Gabriel to transfer to Oregon. And then he has one of the best recruiting classes going into the Oregon's first year in the Big Ten. And I like Oregon at number 8. At number 7, and I know I'm going to get slack from Alabama fans because I did last year when I would do power rankings for the SEC. Number 7 is Alabama. And the one reason they're here is because I'd have them, if Nick Saban was still coaching, they would be inside the top 5. But it is not Nick Saban anymore. It is Kalen DeBoer that is the new head coach at Bama. And he did really good at Washington. He helped Washington get to the national championship game last year. And they almost won the national championship. But I think Alabama's going to be just fine with DeBoer. But you got to give him maybe 1 or 2 years. At number 6 is Michigan. And the reason Michigan's at number 6 is because they have Jim Harbaugh is gone. He's in the NFL. And the sanctions Michigan got are, to me, it's a slap on the wrist, but I'm not going to get into it. They do have a new head coach in Sharon Moore. And they lost a ton. They lost Junior Colson, Blake Corum, Roman Wilson, J.J. McCarthy, Zach Zenner, Mike Sanders still. And I think they're going to regress a little bit. This is post-spring top 25 again. But I don't think in my preseason rankings, they might be lower. Preseason / rankings going into week number 1. They might be lower or they might not be ranked at all. At number 5 is Penn State. Now with Penn State, what I'm going to say is, can they get over the hump and beat? Well, they don't play Ohio State or Michigan this year. But can they beat Oregon? Can they beat Washington? Can they beat USC? Can they beat UCLA? If they can't, I think they will be among the top 3 in the Big Ten. At number 4 is Notre Dame. With Notre Dame, I seem to think that I think Notre Dame's going to be really good this year. They got Riley Leonard, transfer back from Duke. Marcus Freeman's back as the head coach. Mike Denbrock is now the offensive coordinator. And I think Notre Dame is going to be really good. At number 3 is Georgia. And I know SEC fans are going to be a little probably butthurt that I don't have Georgia number 1. And I will explain why in a few minutes when I get to Ohio State. But Georgia did reload in the offseason. I know they lost a few guys in the portal, like I said earlier. But I just feel like Georgia, they're one snap away from winning another national championship. And as a Big Ten supporter and follower of Ohio State, we don't want that. We want new blood in the playoff, which is why I'm glad they're going to a 12-team playoff. And I think Georgia does not have an easy schedule. They play Texas this year, and they play Clemson to start the season. That's going to be a good game. At number 2 is Texas. Texas did lose quite a bit. They lost A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. They lost Jonathan Brooks, but they kept Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian. Sark was one of the guys that was in the running for the Alabama job. But he said no, and he stuck to staying at Texas. And I like that for Sark. I think Texas is going to be really good. I think they're going to be in the top 12 the entire year. And at number 1 is Ohio State. They had a really good winter portal, getting Julian Sayin, getting Caleb Downs, getting Quinshon Judkins, getting Scott McLaughlin from Alabama, and getting a couple more offensive linemen. I think Ohio State's going to be this is the most talented roster Ohio State's ever had in the last decade of college football. And now my honorable mentions go to Miami of Ohio and Louisville. Louisville is another team that they did lose a lot. They did lose some people in the portal, but they also reloaded in the portal. And in Miami of Ohio, back-to-back years, they've won the MAC. And I called it last year. And I think they might win the MAC again this year. And the last thing I'm going to talk about on the podcast is the CFP podcast will be taking a road trip September 5th through the 9th to Blacksburg, Virginia for the Virginia Tech Marshall football game. And we will be we will start having live videos from Blacksburg September 5th, probably around maybe right after lunchtime, going through that whole weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Monday, we come home. Monday, the podcast, which is led by me, will be back at home base in the studio, but there will probably be no pod episode that Monday. Tuesday and Thursday, the week we get back, will probably be the upset picks for that next week of college football. And I'd like to know your opinion your thoughts down in the comment section down below. Should we continue doing the rankings like we did last year for college football? And that wraps up today's episode of the College Football Podcast. I do have a community poll up on YouTube on what kind of video y'all want to see tonight. Please give that a vote. But that wraps up this episode of the CFP podcast. I will see y'all tonight with either play-by-play of the Astros Guardians game or play-by-play of the Bruins Maple Leafs game 6. For the CFP podcast, we are signing off. Peace.